I've been away from the Nights and Weekends Homestead for 3 days for work. In fact, I was in another state, so I've really been away. While I was driving home last night, I got a text from Emily relaying that she had just driven into the driveway, and though it was dark, she could see that the hoop house doors were blowing all over the place. I pulled over on the highway, still about 3 hours south of home, and asked her to close them. She texted back a few minutes later that she wasn't able to close them, and then texted these ominous words: "It's been really windy here today." She wasn't kidding. Apparently, while I was in Massachusetts, we had more than 24 hours of sustained 60-mile-per-hour winds, with gusts even higher than that. When I got home, I ran out to the garden in the dark with only the light from my phone and quickly realized things had gone badly wrong. This morning, when I got back from dropping the kids at school and took Ziggy for a walk, I saw all this debris the wind had picked up and blown toward the south woods. Apparently, it was really bad here.
The wind here over the last 2 days when I was away was really intense, apparently. And I have seen some pretty intense wind in my day. But anyway, this is what my greenhouse looks like.
In some ways, I'm lucky it was dark last night when I got home because it was still very windy. The wisdom I've gained through the years told me there was nothing I could do at that point. In my younger days, I would have been out there with a headlamp, freezing, trying to figure out how to hold down a hoop house with my bare hands and some rope. In other words, I would have stayed up all night, been incredibly frustrated, probably hurt myself, and the outcome wouldn't have changed one bit. Nature is not to be trifled with. That much I've learned. She will do what she needs to do. In fact, she is doing what she needs to do thanks to the things humans have done for the past 300 years. And now we're beginning to pay the price. This shouldn't even be possible given the anchors I had in place, the depth to which they'd been driven, and the fact that this is a sheltered spot in the middle of the woods. But stuff like this is going to become more and more common.
So the entire hoop house has been lifted up and set over. Well, it's hard to say how much the entire thing's moved because on this side, the hoop house was here. You can see the anchor got ripped right out. And I think just the fact that this one is still a little bit in is the only thing that kept this from essentially being up in a tree somewhere. These are pretty serious anchors, and I had them in quite a ways. That one in particular I'm really amazed at. I think it was maybe just that it was a perfect combination of the ground being soft because it's been getting warm really quickly after being so cold for so long, so much longer than normal. Yeah, that one's still in there as well. Really lucky that this didn't, as this plastic was ripping around, it didn't shred on that. I have some damage. This ripped, which is fixable, but like I said, it's really hard to say how far the greenhouse moved because on this side moved in about 2 feet, but then the hoop house is also flexed down. The other side moved 2 feet, and this side moved almost 4 feet, which means that the house has spread out on the base, which is what caused the doors to be unclosable. That's what Emily was worried about last night. She ended up calling me after I texted her back, pulled off and texted her back to please close the doors, because that's what she was worried about. She drove in the driveway, saw that the doors were flying all over the place. It was getting dark, so she didn't realize that the whole thing had moved and that the anchors had been ripped out. But then when she came out here to try to close the doors, obviously she couldn't because they're jammed into the ground and open, because the hoop house has the roof of the hoop house is closer than it should be to the ground because the foundation has spread out. So I'm really busy with work today. I do not have time to fix this. Luckily the wind has died down a little bit. As I say that, it picked up. Because I don't have time to deal with this right now. I have to work today. So anyway, I just came out to take a look at it.
If something like this happens to you, and I hope it doesn't, I recommend you follow the steps you'll see here to get your hoop house back to the spot it's supposed to be. These boards are going to act as skids for this side of the foundation. I'm placing them strategically so this side of the foundation will slide exactly as far as I want it to and then slip off the ends of the board into the soil. That will then stop this side from moving while I bring the other side back toward it, essentially ensuring the hoop house returns to the dimensions it's supposed to be. One of the challenges I face on this property that I didn't have to deal with so much when I was farming at my in-laws is ledge. Nights and Weekends Homestead sits on the side of one of the rockiest hills I've ever seen, and in Maine, that's saying something. Sometimes I think the only reason Maine isn't called the Granite State is that New Hampshire was incorporated before us. That ledge results in some pretty serious water collection this time of year, which makes driving a cedar post into the ground a fairly messy proposition. Now that the foundation of the hoop house has been restored to its normal dimensions, the doors should close. That is, once I do some repair work where the screws ripped out of the punch hole strapping that held the door lumber onto the metal hoops. As I was doing this, I was trying to imagine the amount of force that I would need to put on the punch hole strapping using, say, a lever like a pry bar to pull a screw through one of the holes. I don't know the Newton meters of force it would take, but it's gotta be substantial. Nature really is something to see. As mentioned in a previous video, the scissor door idea is an experiment. I'm already learning from the experience, and the first thing I discovered is that I need to anchor the plastic for the gable ends to something other than the door frame. So I'm going to use this sort of A-frame design and strap the plastic to it. That will not only prevent the plastic from sagging back around the first hoop due to wind, snow, or just opening the door, but it will also give me something to attach the door to when I want to open it and keep it open. As you may recall, if you followed this channel for even a couple months, I had to melt through snow and a few inches of ice to put the anchors in for this hoop house because I didn't get to it in the fall. The anchors I put in to hold the bottom of the doors were not very effective, and it was clear to me almost immediately after installing the scissor doors that these were going to be temporary. I was hoping to get through the spring because I'm going to be moving this hoop house forward by one length when it's time to plant tomatoes, but the wind had other ideas. Because the doors were bungeed to the anchors, those ripped out too when the entire house was lifted. In fact, the anchor on the other end is bent to almost a 45-degree angle. All in all, I'm actually very lucky the damage here wasn't more extensive and permanent. Just when I thought the repair process was going exceedingly well, and that there really wasn't any damage worth writing home about, I ran into a snag.
Even though I walked around and looked at the damage this morning before I started, I missed something, or it happened later when I was yanking on the other end of this. And this is pretty important, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to fix this. The foundation board somehow got inside the hoop. So this right here needs to be out here. And I think that's a lot of pressure. So because there's a curve already in this, I think what I'm gonna do is pull the hoop in and push the board out because it's attached. I don't know how this happened. I think it's because of the flex. So when the anchors let go, when the anchors got ripped out and then the hoop house went over the anchors, like in here, there's the anchor. I've already moved it back. So I did not see this when I lifted this up over the anchor and brought it back in. I did not notice that it was like this, and I don't think it was. So I think this happened when I was pulling the hoop house that way. The other explanation is that I just missed it, and it happened last night when the hoop house got picked up and the anchors ripped out. Seems to me that's the most likely explanation, because there's a lot more force when an entire hoop house gets picked up than there is that I can put on it by just yarding it that way a little bit. But anyway, this foundation board is attached to several of these hoops. So if I can move it, if I can replace it back to the outside of the hoop without undoing that, I'm going to try that. This is going to be a lot of pressure, so I don't know if I can pull that off. We'll see. Give it a shot.